You've been here before. Not literally, you know you haven't, but something about this exact moment, the angle of the light, the way those two people are standing, the sound coming from somewhere behind you, feels like a memory playing back in real time. And then, just as quickly as it came, it's gone. 10 seconds, maybe 15, and you're just standing on an ordinary street again, slightly confused, slightly unsettled, with no idea what just happened to you. That feeling has a name, and it has a real physical explanation inside your brain. And the explanation is genuinely stranger than most people expect. To understand déjà vu, you first need to understand that your brain doesn't process new experiences through just one pathway. It actually runs two parallel systems simultaneously when something new arrives. The first system is fast. It takes in sensory information and generates an almost instant emotional response, including a sense of familiarity or recognition. The second system is slower. It processes the same information more carefully, cross-referencing it against your actual stored memories to determine whether you've really experienced something before. Under normal conditions, these two systems stay in sync. But sometimes, for reasons researchers are still mapping precisely, the fast familiarity signal fires just slightly ahead of the slower verification system. The result is that your brain tags the present moment as already experienced before the fact-checking process has a chance to catch up and correct it. That split-second misfiring is déjà vu, not a supernatural glitch, a timing error between two systems that usually run in perfect coordination. The region most consistently linked to déjà vu experiences is the parahippocampal gyrus, a structure in the medial temporal lobe sitting right next to the hippocampus. This region is specifically responsible for something called familiarity judgment, the sense that something is known, separate from the ability to actually recall it in detail. Researcher Chris Moulin at the University of Grenoble has studied people who experience chronic, uncontrollable déjà vu, a rarer condition sometimes called déjà vécu, and found that in these cases, the familiarity system is essentially stuck in the on position, generating a constant sense that everything is already known, even reading today's newspaper or seeing a friend for the first time. These extreme cases are unusually valuable to researchers because they essentially isolate the familiarity system from everything else. When it runs in isolation, without input from the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, you get a pure, unanchored sense of recognition with no actual memory behind it. That's essentially what déjà vu is, just in a milder, briefer, more common form. Here's the part that reframes the whole experience. Neuroresearcher Akira O'Connor at the University of St. Andrews ran fMRI brain scans on people while inducing a déjà vu-like state in the lab and found something that directly contradicts the common assumption that déjà vu is a memory error. The brain regions that lit up most strongly during the déjà vu experience weren't the memory storage regions. They were the frontal regions associated with decision-making and conflict resolution, specifically the areas that activate when your brain detects a discrepancy and tries to resolve it. O'Connor's interpretation was striking. Déjà vu might actually be a sign of a healthy, well-functioning brain actively catching its own error. The fact that you feel the weirdness of déjà vu at all, that slight sense that something is off, may mean your brain's fact-checking system is working correctly, flagging the false familiarity signal rather than just accepting it without question. In other words, experiencing déjà vu might not mean something went wrong. It might mean something went right. If you've noticed déjà vu happens more often when you're tired, anxious, or running on too little sleep, that's not your imagination. Researchers have found consistent links between fatigue, stress, and increased déjà vu frequency. And the likely reason connects directly to that dual processing system. When the brain is running on reduced resources, the tight coordination between the fast familiarity system and the slower verification system becomes harder to maintain. The gap between the two signals widens slightly, and the chance of a misfiring false familiarity signal gets higher. There's also a dopamine connection. Some research has found that elevated dopamine activity can increase the sense of familiarity independently of whether something is actually familiar. This is part of why certain medications that affect dopamine levels list déjà vu as a documented side effect, And it may partly explain why some people experience déjà vu more frequently than others, even at the same levels of tiredness or stress. There's another trigger that has nothing to do with timing errors or dopamine, and it explains why déjà vu can hit in places you genuinely have never been before. Some researchers have proposed what's sometimes called the Gestalt familiarity theory. The idea is that your brain processes the overall layout and spatial structure of a scene separately from its specific details. So a new hotel lobby might trigger a sense of familiarity, not because you've been in that lobby before, but because its general layout, the angle of a corridor, the relationship between furniture and walls, resembles a scene your brain has stored from somewhere else entirely. Your brain matches the spatial skeleton of the new scene against stored spatial memories, finds a rough overlap, and briefly fires the familiarity signal before the detailed checking process notices the actual location is entirely new. The mismatch that follows, you know this, but you also know you don't, is the unsettling quality that makes déjà vu feel so strange. This may also be part of why déjà vu so often happens when you're distracted or only half paying attention. When your full attention isn't engaged, the brain's coarser, pattern-matching systems tend to run ahead of the finer detail verification ones, making that split second of false familiarity slightly more likely to sneak through. Much of what scientists know about déjà vu comes from studying people with temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition where brief, localized seizures originate in the temporal lobe, the same region housing the parahippocampal gyrus. In many of these patients, déjà vu is one of the most consistent warning signs that a seizure is about to begin, appearing reliably in the seconds before the seizure itself. This has allowed researchers to study déjà vu under conditions they can actually observe and measure in real time, something extremely difficult with déjà vu in healthy people since it arrives and vanishes unpredictably. These observations confirmed that déjà vu isn't just a vague psychological impression, it corresponds to specific measurable electrical activity in a specific part of the brain, briefly overactivating the familiarity system before the rest of the temporal lobe becomes involved. So the next time that strange feeling arrives, that certainty that you've lived this exact moment before, what's actually happening is this. Two parallel systems in your brain have briefly fallen out of sync. Your familiarity signal fired a fraction of a second ahead of your verification process, and a structure called the parahippocampal gyrus momentarily flagged the present as the past. And the fact that it feels strange to you, the slight sense of wrongness that makes you notice it at all, may actually be your brain's error detection system working exactly the way it should. You weren't remembering something that already happened. Your brain just briefly convinced itself that you were, and then caught itself doing it.